Join us and discover beautiful beaches, rugged landscapes, pretty towns, desolate mountain ranges that sweep down to stunning lakes, unique architecture, history and folklore, no shamrocks, no shillelaghs, and definitely no shenanigans. Just naked Ireland. So the question is Irish heritage important in the race to the Whitehouse? I think it seems to be, but let's examine the history. Andrew Jackson, known as Old Hickory, was the 7th President of the United States between 1829 and 1837 and was of Ulster Scots stock. He was born in 1767, just 2 years after his parents left Boney village in County Antrim to live on the border of North and South Carolina. There are actually only 3 US presidents who had at least one parent born in Ireland, and Jackson was one. You can visit the Andrew Jackson Centre today in his old Irish village. He was a general, a lawyer, but ashamedly a slave owner too. The 11th president between 1845 and 49 was James Knox Polk, whose great-great-grandfather was from Donegal, and his great-great-great-grandparents were from Derry, all Presbyterians. So you see, it doesn't seem to matter how far you have to reach back into your ancestry to prove your Irish credentials in America. As long as you have that connection, that's what's important. James Buchanan, the 15th President of the United States, had parents from Donegal who arrived in Pennsylvania in 1783, just 4 years before he was born. Again, Buchanan was one of the presidents who had a parent born in Ireland. Andrew Johnson was the 17th President between 1865 and 69. And guess what? His ancestry, like all the presidents mentioned so far, is also from Ulster. This time, his grandfather, who hailed from Mount Hill in County Antrim. His presidency followed Abraham Lincoln's assassination, and, here's a topical point, he was the first president to be impeached, but he was kept in office by the Senate. Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th president between 1869 and 1877. His great-grandfather was from Ballygawley in County Tyrone, again in Ulster. Notably, he was the first US president to visit Ireland during 1879, albeit he had already left office at that point. He was made an honorary citizen of Dublin and Derry during the short 5-day tour. Apparently his cabinet was rife with corruption and he spent his presidency amid scandal, but hey, sure that wouldn't be the last. The next is Chester A. Arthur, the 21st president. Again, he was one of the presidents with the distinction of having a parent born in Ireland. In this case, his father was born in the Dreen near Ballymena, County Antrim. Yes, you guessed it, again he was an Ulsterman. Grover Cleveland was the 22nd president and the only one ever to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, between 1885 and 89 and then 1893 and 97. And yes, his grandfather was from County Antrim in Ulster. Now this is becoming predictable. And that brings us to the 23rd President, Benjamin Harrison, who served between 1889 and 1893. A devout Presbyterian, again his ancestors came from, wait for it, County Antrim. Interesting fact, he was only 5 feet 6 inches, possibly the shortest of all the US presidents. William McKinley, the 25th President, between 1897 and 1901, brings us into the 20th century. It'll be no surprise for you to learn that his grandfather came from Ballymoney in County Antrim again. He was assassinated in Buffalo, New York in 1901 while delivering a speech. It seems delivering a speech as a president or ex-presidents can be a risky business. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the US, had maternal ancestors from, unsurprisingly, County Antrim, the town of Larne to be exact. He served between 1901 and 1909. At 43, he was at that stage the youngest to take office. Interestingly, he also won the Nobel Prize for Peace for his mediation of the Russo-Japanese War. Take heed, future US presidents. There's a prestigious prize to be won, and there's plenty of scope in the world today for some mediation. William Howard Taft served as the 27th President between 1909 and 1913, and he was also the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Breaking with the standard set by the previous 10 presidents mentioned, he was from County Louth in Leinster. However, we're back to Ulster again with the 28th President, Woodrow Wilson, who served between 1913 and 1921. His ancestors hailed from Tyrone, and in fact there's a museum there today where his ancestral home was. We obviously know him as the president during World War I, but he was also one of the founders of the League of Nations in the war's aftermath. Talking of world wars, this brings us to Harry S. Truman, the 33rd president between 1945 and 1953, who of course presided over the dropping of the atomic bomb on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's an uncomfortable legacy. He had ancestors, again from Ulster, from both counties Donegal and Tyrone. And then we come to the darling of Irish American politics, the 35th President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, serving between 1961 up until his assassination in 1963. JFK was the first American president to visit Ireland while still in office, and he was the first Roman Catholic president and the fourth American president to be assassinated in office. We've all seen the footage of the tragic day in Dallas, Texas. Kennedy presided at the height of the Cold War period, and his time in office is notable for the tensions associated with the Cuban Missile Crisis. His visit to Ireland came just before his death in 1963 and took him to Dublin, Cork, Limerick and his ancestral home in Wexford. He was much admired in Ireland. His successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th president between 1963 and 1969, had a great-great-great-great-grandfather from Galway, so he's our first US president with links to the province of Connacht. He's digging deep back into his ancestral history there though. His presidency was dominated by the Vietnam War. That brings us to Richard Nixon, the 37th president between the years 1969 and 1974. His ancestors were descended from Irish Quakers from Timahoe in County Kildare. Again, Nixon made a state visit to Ireland in 1970, visiting his ancestral home, following on from Kennedy's example. He resigned from office during the Watergate scandal and is the only president in the US to do so. Gerald Ford took over after Nixon's resignation as the 38th president and served until 1977. Returning to the province of Ulster, his great-great-great-great-grandparents were from counties Armagh and Down. Another president claiming Irish ancestry through great-great-great-great-grandparents is Jimmy Carter, who was the 39th president between 77 and 81. Again, his descendants were from County Antrim in Ulster. Easily the county with the strongest links to the US presidency, and it just happens to be my own county, so who knows, maybe I'll become the US president someday. Can I do that from Ireland, I wonder? Again, Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his work mediating in international conflicts, amongst other noble gestures. Ronald Reagan, the 40th president between 1981 and 1989, had great-grandparents from Antrim, obviously, but also Tipperary, taking the presidency for the first time into our fourth and final province of Munster. Again, he visited Ireland in 1984 following re-election for a second term. He went to Ballyporeen in Tip, where apparently they named a local bar after him. George H.W. Bush was the 41st president between 1989 and 93, and his great-great-great-great-grandparents were from County Down, again in Ulster. And so it follows then that his son, our next Irish-American president, George W. Bush, the 43rd president, who took up his place in the White House between 2001 and 2009, has the same ancestry. Barack Obama, the 44th president of the US between 2009 and 2017, had a great-great-great-grandfather from County Offaly in the province of Leinster. He's obviously notable for being the first African-American president. Again, he was a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, and he visited his ancestral home of Donegal in 2011. Now that brings us to Joe Biden, who came into office in 2021, the current and outgoing 46th President of the United States as of this moment, but about to change imminently, which is kind of my reason for making this film. US politics is so prominent at the moment for all the obvious reasons. I just wondered what part Ireland has played in the whole picture. Quite a big one, as you've seen. His great-great-grandparents were from counties Mayo and Louth. Now, one final point is that you'll have noticed that since JFK in 1961, there's been an almost unbroken line of presidents with Irish roots, except for Donald Trump, who'll we come to in a minute, and also with the exception of the period between 1993 and 2001, which was the Clinton administration. Now, Clinton appears not to have had any Irish roots. However, he had strong connections with the country, having visited and taken an active role in the Northern Ireland peace process. Now that brings us up to date, but only depending on when you're watching this film, as ex-President Donald J. Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris are currently sparring it out, to use a polite term, to become the 47th President. Of these two candidates, only one seems to have Irish ancestral connections. Harris's father, Professor Donald Harris, recently revealed that their family's roots stretch back to prominent Ulster Scotsman Hamilton Brown from Ballymoney, yes, in County Antrim, who emigrated to Jamaica and was fervently anti-abolitionist, and an enslaver on his plantations there. It's a dark history, but it does seem to connect Harris firmly with Ireland. Now, her opponent in the run-up to the presidential election, Donald Trump, seemingly has no Irish connection. Therefore, if an Irish connection is important, even if it's a tenuous and dark one, perhaps Harris is bound for the presidency. Perhaps she's already there, depending on when you watch this video. If not, then perhaps we Irish are not that important after all. If you found this interesting or informative, you can now donate to the channel by buying me a pint. It's not hard, just look at the second paragraph in the description below the video and you'll find a link that'll take you to the donation page. Otherwise, if you'd like to subscribe and like the video, that's fine too, of course. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all in the next Naked Ireland video.